This is Project Grimfield, Episode 5, I Knew, by David Hooker. This audiobook uses AI-generated narration. AI Finn is narrating this story. Chapter 9, Unforgettable. He dragged himself to the bedroom and collapsed onto the mattress. His breathing slowed, but the peace was short-lived. In the gray twilight of his mind, David stood alone in a cemetery. Low clouds hung like heavy wool, and the air tasted of damp earth. Two tombstones sat side by side, Andrew Holloway and Samantha Holloway. As he stepped closer, the wind seemed to carry voices, hissing, disappointed whispers. So much potential, so little to show for it. Life is short, David. No, David groaned, covering his ears. He turned to run, but the ground shifted like sand. The sky turned pitch black in an instant. In the distance, a car was engulfed in roaring flames. Two silhouettes stood inside the fire, their hands clasped together. David froze, his heart hammering against his ribs. Mom, the figures didn't move. The fire crackled louder, a deafening roar that drowned out his screams. David jolted awake, the word Dad tearing from his throat. He gasped, clutching his chest as sweat beaded on his forehead. Sunlight crept through the blinds, mocking the darkness of the dream. The nightmare was gone, but the weight remained. He sat on the edge of the bed, pressing his palms into his eyes until he saw stars. I just want one night of peace, he rasped. Just one. Why is that so hard to have? He stood and began to pace, the floorboards creaking under his agitation. I don't ask for much. I'm not asking to be happy, just quiet. The sudden shrill of the phone made him jump. He stared at it, a bitter scoff escaping his lips. Of course, now I gotta talk to the miracle worker. He snatched it up. Yeah? Good morning, David. Walter's calm voice came through the line. Are you coming in today? David leaned against the wall, staring at a crack in the plaster. I'm fine. I'm glad to hear that. Still, I'd like to talk, maybe work on some coping techniques, figure out your goals. David rubbed his temple. Yeah, I'll see what I can do. He hung up and tossed the phone onto the couch. Ugh, all he's gonna do is prescribe me some stupid medicine, give me a pep talk, and send me on my way. He began to dress, his movements jerky and frustrated. Why do therapists even exist? You're literally paying someone to pretend they care about you. Like, wow, thanks for listening. That'll be $200. He stopped in front of the mirror, his voice dropping to a hollow whisper. As if I'm not already drowning financially, I know it doesn't get better. He grabbed his jacket, his anger simmering into a dull, flat exhaustion. I'll just get this over with, and cancel everything. The clinic was a place of neutral colors and soft lighting, designed to soothe the fact that only made David more tense. He sat on the couch in Walter's office, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. So, have you had any dreams lately? Walter asked, pen poised over a journal. David looked away, his jaw tightening. Yeah, what were they about? Walter asked, and David hesitated. Can I ask a question? What's it gonna fix if I tell you? Doesn't it just make me look crazy? Walter met his gaze with steady, patient eyes. You're not crazy, but I can tell you feel guilty. David, I've been your therapist for 6 months. Your dreams almost always revolve around loss, losing people, safety, control. You're either afraid of something or you feel guilty about something. Please, tell me what the dream was about. David swallowed hard. My parents. I know they passed 5 years ago. Walter nodded gently. But tell me what happened around that time, why it haunts you. I can't talk about that. If you truly want to heal, you have to open up. It stays between us. David looked at him, searching for a trap. Me and you? Yes. David exhaled a long, shaky breath. It started on my dad's birthday. The memory of that day in the Holloway living room felt more like a haunting than a flashback. Andrew, 60 years old and practically glowing, stood by the mantelpiece. Resting there, catching the light, was a brand new car key. This is the best thing that's ever happened to me, Andrew said, his voice thick with a rare, unbridled excitement. Leaning against the far wall, 20-year-old David merely rolled his eyes. The gesture didn't go unnoticed. What's wrong with you? Samantha asked, her eyes darting between her husband's joy and her son's indifference. I don't even understand what's so special about a car, David muttered. Samantha's voice sharpened. If you worked for one, you'd understand how important it is. Dad already had a car, David countered, his voice flat. What's the point? Your aunt wanted to do something nice for him, Samantha said, her tone leaning into an accusation. Are you jealous? No, I just don't get it. Later that night, David lay on his bed, the walls of his room offering the only sanctuary he had. He kept his headphones in, the music cranked high, a desperate wall of sound meant to block out the noise from the living room. My aunt bought him that car, David thought. the narration of his own life playing like a bitter internal monologue, and suddenly it mattered more than anything. He talked about it like it was alive, like it was his son. My boy. Me and my boy going for a drive, like it deserved love just for existing, something I never got. He drifted into a fitful sleep, only to wake suddenly in the late hours of the night. His eyes adjusted to the heavy darkness of the room. Outside his window, a shadow moved blurry, shifting, then gone. David rubbed his eyes, his heart beginning to rhythm against his ribs. The figure was gone. But the silence felt wrong. He rolled off the bed, staying low to the floor, crawling toward the window. He reached the blinds and gingerly peeked through. In the driveway, several figures moved toward the new car. David's heart pounded in his ears. He looked toward the front door, frozen, waiting for them to break in. But they didn't touch the door. Instead, there was the muffled, rhythmic sound of metal clanking. Tools. Tires. He watched as they sabotaged the vehicle. A small screw was forced with deliberate pressure into the tire tread. As quickly as they had arrived, the figures vanished into the darkness. David watched the empty driveway, shaking. Then, slowly, he stood. He returned to his bed and pulled the covers up. He told no one. By Saturday night, the tension in the house had reached a boiling point. Samantha adjusted her purse, and Andrew buttoned his jacket. They were dressed nicely, the atmosphere between them lighter than it had been in weeks. "We're going on a date," Samantha announced. David sat on the couch staring at nothing. "What's with that look?" Andrew asked, his annoyance immediate. "What look?" "That face you always make," Andrew snapped. "Like the room owes you something." David offered no answer, which only fueled Andrew's fire. "You know what it is? You're always miserable. Always have been. And you can't stand it when anyone else isn't." David finally looked up, his gaze hollow. "They say misery loves company," Andrew continued. "That's you. You sit there, sulking, waiting for someone else's happiness to feel like an insult. You don't work. You don't try. And somehow, you still walk around like the world failed you." David stood up. His hands were shaking, but his voice remained steady. "You never made me feel loved." The words landed heavier than he expected. Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. "I might be a nobody," David said quietly, "but I came from one." The slap was sharp and immediate. Samantha's hand left a sting on David's cheek that matched the fire in her eyes. "Don't you ever talk to us like that." David stared at her. He wasn't angry, he was simply broken. "I wasn't trying to disrespect you. I don't know how I'm supposed to feel watching you care more about everything else than me." "Oh, don't do that," Samantha cried, her voice rising in desperation. "Don't turn this into we're bad parents. You've always been like this, always pulling the air out of the room." Andrew shook his head. "I told you, we should have put him out when he turned 18. This is your fault," Samantha said, turning her anger toward her husband, her voice overwhelmed. "No. He's a man. He's responsible for himself." "I can't deal with this right now," Samantha snapped, grabbing her coat. "I'll wait in the car." She stormed out, leaving Andrew behind. He looked at David, but there was no rage left in his eyes, just a cold, flat disappointment. "When we get back," Andrew said, "pack your things." He turned and left. The door closed with a finality that felt like a gavel hitting a block. In the center of the living room, David stood alone as something inside him quietly broke. Rain began to dot the windshield as the car pulled away. Streetlights streaked past in long yellow blurs. Inside the cabin, Samantha sat rigid in the passenger seat, her arms crossed tight over her chest. The silence stretched until it was unbearable. "Maybe," Samantha said, her voice quiet and breaking. "Maybe we didn't do enough." Andrew's grip tightened on the wheel. "Don't start. I'm serious. We let things slide. We should have been harder on him. Boot camp. Something. Discipline. So now this is my fault? I didn't say that. You're thinking it." Andrew shot back. "You yelled at me for years, Andrew. He watched that. You think he didn't learn how to talk to me from you?" Andrew scoffed, his eyes fixed on the road. "That's convenient. Blame me. Blame yourself. Blame everything except him." He pressed his foot down. The car sped up slightly. "I'm just saying maybe we." "No," Andrew barked. "It's not me. It's not you." He paused for a second. "It's him." Samantha exhaled shakily. "I just wanted peace tonight." "So did I." The car hit a rough patch in the road. A faint metallic thump echoed through the chassis. Andrew's brow furrowed. "Did you feel that?" Before Samantha could answer, the steering wheel jerked violently to the left. The car swerved, tires screaming against the wet asphalt. Andrew, he fought the wheel, his muscles straining, but then the tire blew. The world began to spin. Suddenly, the darkness was obliterated by the blinding high beams of an 18-wheeler. A horn blared, a wall of sound that swallowed everything else. Impact. Metal screamed as it folded. Glass shattered into 1,000 diamonds. Then the roar of fire. Chapter 10. Loved and lost. Back at the house, David was a whirlwind of frantic energy. He ranted to himself, tossing clothes and papers into a bag with trembling hands. All my life I've been tired of them, he hissed. Tired of being ignored, of being punished for everything, of being nothing. They want to kick me out. Fine, I'll be gone. I'll make sure I never come back. He stopped mid-sentence. Through the gaps in the blinds, red and blue lights began to pulse against the walls of his room. Sirens wailed, growing louder, then stopping abruptly nearby. His heart skipped a beat. He froze, caught between the urge to hide and the need to know. Curiosity and a cold rising fear pulled him toward the door. He grabbed his jacket. I can't just sit here. He ran out into the night. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and burning rubber. David's breathing was ragged as he sprinted down the wet street, his eyes wide. Smoke curled into the black sky, illuminated by the rhythmic flash of fire trucks and police cruisers. His legs began to feel like lead as he saw the blood staining the concrete ahead. Flames licked at the wreckage. The car, twisted beyond recognition, sitting in the center of the chaos. His stomach dropped. His chest tightened until he couldn't breathe. He recognized the frame. He recognized the color. Dad, he whispered. David collapsed to his knees, his body trembling violently. The sound of the sirens and the shouting of first responders seemed to fade away, leaving only the hollow crackle of the fire. His mind raced, a blurred loop of the figures in the driveway and the words said in the living room. He fell onto the cold pavement, hands pressed against the ground, frozen in the flickering light of the wreckage. In the present, David sat frozen on Walter's office couch. Tears welled in his eyes. I saw them, that night. Before it happened, I didn't say anything, David whispered, his voice cracking. I didn't want the car to exist. I didn't want it to matter more than me. And I let them die. The silence in the room was heavy and thick. David thought of the weeks after the crash, the isolation, the eviction notice, and the social media posts from relatives questioning his off behavior, wondering if he was responsible. David, I hear you, Walter said softly. And I see how much this has weighed on you, but you're not alone here. David sniffled, tears finally streaming down his face. I basically killed them. I let it all get messed up because I didn't say anything. I didn't care what happened to anything they possessed. He stood up abruptly, his voice breaking. I think I need to go. He moved toward the door, but Walter reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. David, wait. David gently moved the hand aside. Stop. I don't need to be here. Walter hesitated, then stepped closer and opened his arms. David stood still for a second. Then finally, the armor shattered. He leaned into the hug, allowing the comfort to reach him for the first time in 5 years, his silent tears soaking into the professor's shoulder. The light in Walter's office was stagnant, caught in the quiet hum of the afternoon. David remained rooted in his chair, his body heavy with the weight of the air. He let out a long, slow exhale, a conscious effort to steady the trembling deep in his marrow. Walter broke the silence, his voice low and measured. Did you ever visit their graves after? David's head moved in a slow, jagged nod. Yeah, he whispered. I didn't speak at the funeral. I couldn't. He swallowed hard, the muscles in his throat tight. I wrote them a letter instead, something I wrote when I was 16, in my diary. It felt like the only honest thing I had. Walter didn't interrupt. He sat there silent, present, a witness to the confession. I went alone, David added, his voice trailing off into the memory. The sky was a bruised, heavy gray, hanging low over the cemetery. A younger David, barely 20, stood as a solitary pillar between two granite markers, Andrew Holloway, Samantha Holloway. The wind stirred the long grass, the only sound in the vast open stillness. David's hands shook as he reached into his pocket and unfolded a page. It was worn and creased, the ink tired from years of being folded and refolded. At his feet sat a small Bible, its leather cover stiff and its pages smelling of the store. He hadn't opened it yet. He just kept it near him, a frantic anchor he didn't quite know how to use. He began to read, his voice thin against the wind, though in his mind, the words echoed with the weight of a lifetime. Sometimes I feel like my suffering is endless, his inner voice recited, like it never actually stops. It just changes shape. The relationships that once brought me peace now only remind me of what I never really had. Day by day, the dreams I used to hold on to fade further away. So does the love I kept hoping would come back to me, the same way I gave it. He looked down at the names etched in stone. People say they're suffering. They say no one loves them. And I don't know how to explain how that hurts because I loved them. I gave everything I had. And if that love was real to them, there would be nothing they could do that would make me take it back. Most people say I love you, but what they really mean is I love you as long as you give me something, as long as you don't disappoint me, as long as you don't correct me, as long as you don't show weakness, as long as you don't make me uncomfortable, as long as you don't need too much. My whole life was built on that kind of love, conditional. The wind bit at his cheeks, but he didn't move. I tried to understand it. I even bought a Bible, looking for purpose, looking for something that didn't leave when I stopped being perfect. What I learned is this: people love the version of you that doesn't challenge them. The moment the cracks show, they pull away. I've lived with self-hatred for a long time. Loneliness too. When I was alone, I was miserable, but at least no one depended on me. No one needed me to be something I couldn't be. I don't know how to fix any of this. I don't know how to forgive myself. I just know I'm tired of trying to earn love. He stopped, his breath hitching. I love you, Mom. I love you, Dad. David sank to his knees, the damp earth soaking into his jeans. With his bare hands, he began to dig, carving a small, shallow hole in the dirt, exactly between the two headstones. He folded the diary page with trembling precision, tucked it into the earth, and covered it back up. He pressed his palm firmly into the fresh soil, holding it there like a man trying to seal a wound that refused to close. Back in the office, David's eyes were glassy, fixed on a point somewhere past the walls. That was my way of leaving my thoughts with them, he said, his voice returning to the present. Walter nodded gently, his expression softening. You didn't leave nothing, David. You left truth. David looked down at his empty hands, unsure whether to believe that truth was enough. This concludes Project Grimfield. Episode 5, I Knew, by David Hooker. This audiobook uses AI-generated narration. AI Finn is narrating this story.